So in this video, we are going to be covering how to actually set up a split test that doesn't break everything in Facebook ads. So the first thing that we need to get out of the way is that split testing in Facebook is a very inexact science. And for anyone coming out of any sort of traditional marketing or direct response background, or even an AdWords background, to be very frank, split testing in Facebook, even the concept of split testing in Facebook, can be absolutely infuriating. I'll be the first to say it. I come from an AdWords background myself, and it was an adjustment period. And so essentially the issue with split testing in Facebook is that you don't have as complete of control over all of the variables as you do in most other marketing platforms. Now, this is both a blessing and a curse. The blessing is the Facebook machine learning algorithm is very, very smart and optimizes on your behalf all the time, which allows you to get better results than any other advertising platform in the world right now. The curse of this is that split testing is less of a, hey, I'm going to run a scientific A/B split test, and more of a, hey, I'm just going to try this thing, and if it works better, great, and if it doesn't, no worries. And I'm not really going to have apples to apples comparisons, but that's just the way it is. That's the framework that we have to work under. And so there are a number of elements that typically make the most sense to split test in order of priority, and this is the order of priority that I choose to split test my campaigns. And so the very first thing that I always split test is the ad format or the creative of the ad. Why do I test this first? Because this is the variable that has the largest impact on ad performance and ad engagement. So what do I mean when I say ad format or creative? Well, so you've got your typical ad here, right? And you've got your creative here. You've got your text up here, headline down here, and then your button and your link, etc. So when I say split test the ad format of the creative first, I mean split testing this area here, which involves a number of different things. It could be an image, could be a video, could be an illustration, it could be a carousel ad involving multiple images or videos, could be a slideshow ad, could be a collection ad, or it could be a messenger ad, which is a completely different format, or it could even be a canvas ad if you want to get pretty complex with it. And so these are the very first things that I will test in any ad. The first things that I'll test is the ad format and the creative. And so if I'm relatively happy with a headline and I'm relatively happy with the text, then I'll just use the exact same headline and text, and I'll just cycle through all of these different ad format or creatives to see if any of those ads actually perform better or not. Lead ads is also another option. After I sort of exhaust my list of ad formats to test, then I'll move into split testing the ad text. And so this is where typically I will test short form versus long form. So I might have like a really long story, and then I might have like a couple sentences and a call to action, right? I might switch up the ad template that I use. And so I'll switch up template and see which type of story or which template resonates most with my market. After I test the ad text, then I will go on to test the ad headline. And so this is just essentially the hook. So I'll just test different variants of the headline. Instead of how I did this, it could be how to get this result, could be a question, any number of things. I just test various headlines. And then the last thing that I will test after I've sort of exhausted all of these is I'll test different ad placements. And so the way to test an ad placement is actually just to go into the existing ad set. It's not to duplicate the ad set. It's to go into the existing ad set, just click edit, and then actually just choose an additional ad placement. So if I wanted to test, for example, placing this in the Instagram feed and Instagram stories, I would add that in, click publish, and then I would watch my results over the next week or so and just see what differences there have been, if any, what sort of results I'm seeing. You would not want to actually duplicate the ad set because that's not a true split test for various reasons that are just, it would take too long to go over. The way to test the placement is to actually just add it in to an existing ad set. And so those are pretty much all of the things that can be tested at the ad level. Some additional things that can be tested at the ad set level is actually conversion optimization events. So again, if we go into an ad set, we could go ahead and duplicate this ad set. And if we wanted to test a different conversion optimization event, this could be a duplicated ad set, and we could change this to webinar attendees, right? So we test it for that conversion event, and we see what happens. Another alternative could be to, let's go back to the slides here. So custom conversions or custom events. So you can also test the difference, if any, between setting up a custom event, which is placing custom code on your page, or a custom conversion, which is just setting the conversion event at the URL level. You can test them against each other if you want. You can test the conversion window. So that's going into your ad set and changing the conversion window to 1 day click or view to, for example, 7 days click or 1 day view, or just changing the conversion window and again seeing what happens. You can test the bidding, so instead of keeping it at automatic bidding, you can change it to manual bidding, and you can go a maximum bid of, let's say I'm willing to pay $10 per registrant, or I could say I'm shooting for an average of $7 per registrant. You can test those manual bidding options against each other to see if you get better performance. And then obviously you can also test additional audiences in additional ad sets. That goes without saying, but you can certainly test those against each other. And so a few rules to cover before we go into the nuts and bolts of split testing. Remember the number one rule of if it's profitable, don't fix it. So if a campaign is profitable and performing well, don't mess with it. You can scale it, but don't do anything else, because there's a chance that you're going to break it, and there's really no need to mess with it if it's performing the way that you want it to. So if it's profitable, don't try and fix it. And after introducing any change or any new split test, it's incredibly important, I can't stress this enough, you have to wait a minimum of 3 days before you expect your results to normalize. And so typically I wait up to a week before making any go or no-go decisions with the test, but you have to wait a 3-day minimum. And so for example, if we go back to our KPI tracking sheet here, you can see that there's times when all of a sudden the cost per lead will jump up by a couple bucks for about 3 days. And I'm not making up this 3-day number, guys. It's because literally pretty much every time the CPL jumps up, it's because I introduced some sort of test or scaled or made some change to the campaign, and it caused the CPL to jump up by just about 3 days on the dot every time before then falling back down, getting re-optimized, and actually getting better results. And so I'm not making this up when I say that you have to wait a minimum of 3 days before expecting your results to normalize and take effect so that you can start working with some real data. And again, I've stressed this before, but you have to keep in mind to monitor your KPIs throughout the entire funnel for each split test you run. And so changing an ad or creative can and will impact the conversion rates that you see at the end of your funnel. So even if a given ad split test lowers your cost per clicks, for example, it could be a false positive because that change could also impact the conversion rate down the funnel. And so let's say I launch a split testing an ad format on the 29th of May, and my cost per click drops, by 50 cents. I would still be hesitant and need to monitor that closely to make sure that those clicks were still converting on the back end before I actually introduce that change across all of my ad sets. And so the way to split test ad elements is to test any new element of an ad. So whether that's a new creative, new format, new text, new headline, simply duplicate the existing ad and incorporate the test element in that duplicate ad, which will then cause Facebook to begin distributing traffic to the new ad based on performance, and ultimately shift that performance. So what do I mean by that? So let's say we want to drill into this. We'll pick on this ad set since we've been doing that. Let's take a look at the ads running for that ad set. So let's say we want to test a different headline for this ad. So what I'm going to do is just go in and duplicate this ad here. Make sure it's staying in the same campaign and an ad set, which it is. And now I'm just going to say, call it split test. Right? And I want to change the headline to where's my line? To how to start a profitable consulting business. Instead of paid traffic agency, how to start a profitable consulting business. Great. So now I've got this ad in here, and when I click publish and push this live, what Facebook is going to do is Facebook's going to realize, okay, in this ad set, there's a new ad. So I'm going to start sending some test traffic to this new ad. Now, when that happens, one of two things can happen. Either, so here's the split test ad. Either Facebook can send some test traffic, and if the engagement is positive, Facebook will continue sending traffic to it. And so you're going to get some statistically significant data over the next 3 to 7 days, hopefully at least 30 clicks worse, then you can compare it against the other ad sets. However, Facebook is constantly trying to optimize on your behalf. And so if the first few people that Facebook send to that ad actually just bounce or don't engage with it, essentially, then Facebook's just going to decide, okay, this ad, people don't really like it, and so I'm just going to stop sending traffic to that ad, and occasionally Facebook will stop sending traffic to the ad prematurely. So if you actually feel pretty strongly, and again, this is why the number one rule is if it's profitable, don't try and fix it. But if you feel strongly about a given split test that you want to run, and you're like, hey, I really think that this is going to outperform, despite how much I've cautioned you to get emotional about this, then what you have to do if Facebook won't deliver to it is you have to actually go in and turn off the other ads and force Facebook to deliver to this ad, and then you can compare the results over a 7-day timeline or whatever that looks like, and then decide if you want to keep this ad live or actually turn these other ads back on and turn the test off. And so that is how you test a new ad elements, and like I mentioned, you let the ad run for 3 to 7 days before making any determinations, and like I also mentioned, ensure that the test ad receives at least 30 unique link clicks before making any determinations, and again, you may need to turn off the control ads to ensure the test ad receives distribution. One point to note, you never want more than 4 ads running live in a campaign at any given time. Typically, I keep it to 2 or 3. Any more than 4, and Facebook really struggles with proper distribution. So keep it to less than 4 ads at a given time. Now, if you're testing changes at the ad set level, the correct way to test all changes at the ad set level, with the exception of placements like I mentioned, is to simply go into the ad set and just duplicate the existing ad set. So go ahead, duplicate the ad set in the same campaign. So we can just duplicate it and call it split test. And then you can go in and make whatever changes you want to split test. Now, if you're duplicating an ad set that's at scale, so let's say my control ad set was at like $200 a day, and I duplicate it, I would want to set my test budget at $25 to $50 per day, just because you have no idea how it's going to perform, right? And so you don't want to set your duplicate budget too high. On the flip side, I would not set it as low as $5. I'd set it at right around $25 to $50. Now, another reason you don't want to set your budget too high is because that way you will keep away from what's called audience overlap. And so if we take a look back at sort of our audience illustration, if you remember, this is the mess, so I'll create a new page. But if you remember our audience illustration, so essentially we have all of the USA, and then we have, based on our constraints, Facebook decides that these people is the audience that you're actually going to target. Now, if you duplicate this audience, Facebook's going to create another ad set targeting the exact same or very close to the exact same people. And so one issue that you can potentially run into is if you have ad set A and B at very high ad spend rates, it basically means that you're just carpet bombing all of these people with ads from the same campaign. And so essentially what happens is ad set B is pulling as many people as it can from these audiences, ad set A is pulling as many people as it can from these audiences, and there's just an audience overlap going on. You're oversaturating that market, and so as a result, your performance across both ad sets will drop. And so at a 30-second summary, that is what audience overlap is, which is why you want to, anytime you duplicate an ad set, you want to start out low to make sure that the performance of both ad sets doesn't drop. If the performance of both ad sets does drop, then just kill the duplicate and resume with the control ad set. And so to be clear, anytime you duplicate an ad set, it's never a true 50-50 split test, right? Because essentially you're pulling from the same audience, and you can't control who Facebook decides to pull, but ad set A will pull someone, ad set B will pull someone, and so ad set A will pull someone, ad set B will pull someone, and so it's not really a true 50-50 split, but it's as close as you can get in Facebook ads. And ultimately, the result will be your duplicate ad set will either be within KPI, in which case you can scale it, or it won't be within KPI and you can kill it. And that's about as scientific as you need to be. And so if your ad set test is within KPI, then that gives you additional scaling options. We're going to get into scaling strategies in an upcoming video. And also, it's potentially better performance. And so if you have a limited budget, you can kill the old ad set and scale this one because it's giving you better performance. And like I mentioned, just be cognizant of the fact that audience overlap between ad set A and B is possible. If you are scaling, like let's say both ad sets are within KPI and you're scaling both, and the performance in both of them as you scale sort of just randomly and inexplicably starts to drop, then audience overlap is almost certainly what's happening. And so at that point, you just either need to scale back or kill the lower performing ad set to get rid of this audience overlap issue. Now, the last thing I want to touch on when it comes to split testing, Facebook does have built-in split testing features designed for testing very specific elements around the ads, and they sort of grow out that suite of products and capabilities. Every month or so they add something. These can work really great, and they definitely give you much more fine-tuned control over your split testing. In my opinion, however, they add unnecessary complication to your campaign. They're not really necessary. I've tested them. I haven't noticed a significant difference in results or ability to optimize versus going with my system, which is very lightweight and requires very little reporting, and it's just very easy to maintain and conduct at scale versus using their more fine-tuned approach. And so I recommend that you stick with the framework in this video, and assuming you stick with the framework, you follow this process, you will test and optimize your way to profitability in a very sustainable and time-efficient manner, in a manner that takes you, maybe 30 minutes once or twice a week max, as opposed to trying to set up all these split tests with a fine-toothed comb and just like control every single element. If you just follow this process, you will get profitable results. And again, profitable results are all that we care about. And so, there's a lot of people who just make all this big deal about Facebook split testing. At the end of the day, if you follow this process and just remember that, hey, I don't care about creating a true statistical A/B test. I just care about getting better results. If you keep that mindset in mind and follow this process, you will get better results and you will be successful with your Facebook split testing. I'll see you in the next video.